Hello again, Professor Ardone. I'm glad that you're meeting with me again to continue this interview series. I had a few questions that I forgot to ask during our first interview. How was your healthcare as a child? Did you see doctors or just use like homemade medicines, even for like severe illnesses?
Buena pregunta. That's a good question. I never thought about that. Remember when I told you the incident that my brother and I were playing?
Yes, and you cut your
So
thumb with the
okay, he
machete.
cut it.
Yeah,
He cut it, right? Because we were playing with it.
you still have the
No,
scar too.
yeah, that's what,
Can you show it to the camera?
me-
Real close to the camera right here.
medicina. It's an ugly
Yeah.
word. La medicina casera.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about, the remedies.
Mm-hmm.
Our remedies, right? La
Mm-hmm.
medicina casera. So my mom would just wrap it up, and then they would use, they would kill wild animals like not the raccoons. What are the other one? The possums.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And then my dad would take that fatty part to make some kind of oil,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's why they use
To
wild
like seal the
animals.
wound.
Yes, to seal. And then there are some plants there that my mom will go to that and get the leaves, put it in water, and I guess that's how I get the infection because my nail didn't come back right, uh, and then
But
it healed, and
but you
if
didn't get an
if you
infection.
didn't get an
You didn't
infection,
lose your finger.
no, I didn't get an infection. I didn't get an infection. I was hurt for a day or so, but the nail was still there, and one that I lost the nail, and it was gone. But obviously they didn't take me to the doctor, so it didn't. Uh, I needed a surgery. If we had been here in the United States or in the city over there, they would take me to the doctor. The doctor would take the nail and put stitches and fix it, you know. But uh, we also there, which are in the United States a long time ago, also people will get parasites in the
Like
stomach, right?
tapeworms and
Yeah, we didn't get the tapeworm, but similar to that. So there is a plant that my mom will cut and then boil, and it was, man, so horrible to take, sour, and then they forced us, my mom and dad, they forced us to take it in the morning,
and then
and that will clean your system.
mm,
That's the medicine. The part that I want when I said that I am so no fun of the injections, we go to somebody who was like a nurse practitioner, somebody who knew some kind of medicine. There were two guys. And then funny at that time we got a lot of people from El Salvador that they live there. And the Salvadorians are very, very industrious, very, very smart people. So those two people were Salvadorians. And then they had some kind of medical training. And then they will, give you an injection. And then by then it was early in the 60s, 70s, penicillin was a new thing. So it was anything thought they would boil water. And that was the scary thing ever. You hate being sick because if we get sick, my dad would say, okay, so we're going to call, I don't remember the guy's name, but I remember her, the lady, Delfina, Doña Delfina. So we're going to call Doña Delfina to come and give you an injection. Oh, we start crying, because you will see they will come with a little, like a portable, like stove kind, one thing that I have a little base where you put the kerosene, like a
mm,
gasoline, and like a burner. So you can see when she got like it matches, turn it on, and you can smell the gas burning.
mm,
And then she had the needles, and they put the whole thing under the jeringa, the syringe. Is that what it's called?
syringe, yeah,
Syringe. So by then they were made out of metal. It's not like today they're disposable. They had to boil them.
because they reused them for
They
different
reuse
patients.
them. So you can have, and then for kids, you can see that the needle was not that long, but you can see that long, and then you can see her getting ready, getting all the things in the table, and then by then my brother and I, we were ready, woo,
Mm.
and then had that thing, and then it would boil, and then they would disinfect it, and then they have alcohol, and then my dad and my mom would get us
Hold it
in the
down.
legs, hold it down, and then they will get the injections. So that's what the calls what that we get the most,
So
sneezing, and that was the daycare.
so you got like vaccines to prevent
Yeah,
sicknesses
we get, yes,
eventually.
we get the vaccine. But the vaccine already had
But for
come.
like common illnesses, you just did homemade
Yes,
remedies.
yeah, but we're like the what we talk about the measles today, the sarampion that we just talked about, and then chicken pox, all of the things. TB, tuberculosis at that time was still a big deal. I still have my, you
TB
can,
scar.
yes, you
Oh
can,
yeah, yeah. That's
you,
oh wow. You can see
you
it.
can see them, and
That was a big needle.
those are, I don't know, it's just the reaction. It was the reaction, the TB vaccines, and then I think we got three.
I've had my tuberculosis vaccines. Yeah,
Yes.
I
So
remember my arm was swollen for days.
yes, and then when we were kids, we would be mean to each other. We squeeze it to somebody just to get the other person,
Or like when somebody gets
right,
the flu shot, you walk them and smack them in the arm.
right. So I remember getting those. So all the vaccine, got all the vaccinations. So like for polio and all of the things. But yeah, to have a pediatrician that you take it regularly every year, we never did that. We never did that. No, we didn't have that. You had to go to the city, and it was
Spend a
an
lot of
all
money,
day long going to the city, spend the night there, and come back the next day.
and you spend a lot of money because you're
Eh,
paying for the doctor
right.
and like a
Mm,
hotel or staying with a family
yes.
member and
Nowadays, those
buying
trips
food
are
in the
like
city and
nowadays those trips are like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. A
yeah.
paved road. You go.
Technology
You
is
can
very
call the
useful.
doctor. You call the doctor, make the appointment. You already had the appointment. You go. Now everything has changed, and that. Yeah, that was the healthcare. We didn't really have that. It was just remedies, home remedies that my mom will fix for us. Grandma, the same thing.
And then in our previous interview, you mentioned before that you only completed what you would consider to be elementary school when you were around 17 or 18. So when did you start middle school equivalent, or did you just go like straight to high school?
Over there, they don't divide it. There is one single high school, and then you start sixth grade.
Is at the start of high school.
Right. I mean, seventh grade. You finish, elementary goes up to sixth.
Mhm.
So the high school starts in seven. And the first 3 years, it's called, in Spanish, they call it plan básico, like a basic, the basic, like secondary school, the equivalent to the middle school. Middle school. The whole thing is secondary school from 7th to 11th or 12th. 'Cause there are some different areas when you can go and complete 5 years of high school, or you can complete 6 years. So it depends. I went for the 6 years because I was trained as a kind of an accountant. Like I worked for a bank. I work actually in Honduras. I work for a bank corporation. So I did 6 years, and then I have basic in accounting. Like I learned how to, like a balance check and
Write a budget,
write
all
a
the
budget, that kind of thing. Basic accounting. I did that. So I was 18 in 82. I had turned 18 in 81. Yeah, because I turned 19, and yeah, in 82 is my first year that I went to the high school. And I mentioned to you, it was a new thing in Honduras with a new government, because we haven't with dictators,
and they're
from the
always
60s,
changing.
they were changing. But beginning of the 80s, those military guys, there were military guys who were running the country, and one would take over, the coup, what they call, so with the army, the soldiers would come and remove that military guy, and
Because he wasn't doing a good
another one who
job.
was doing it according to them, right? It's all about corruption, getting money. Um, and but the last person was a good guy. He announced, he said he was going to allow people to vote. So early 80s, there was some kind of election, and there was not really per se one elected person. It was like a committee, about a group of people,
You
and
elected like a council, not like a president.
transition, and then in 82 was the first election, again, democratic election, and this guy came with the new idea. The first thing that he did was to help the secondary education, and then a lot of people would not uh, finish high school because either they, like, girls would get pregnant. Once you get pregnant, then you can go to school, to a high school.
Because you have to stay at home
It's a
and
stereotype. It's a stereotype. And then young men, they had kids and they had to work. So this guy came with this initiative in beginning of 80s, early 80, 81, I think, 80, 81. He opened the session from 6 to 10 p.m. at night. So people who will work in the daytime, they can go to school at night. So my dad agreed that I didn't have to help him more in the farm, and he would help me with a little bit, but I was supposed to get a job. So I came to the city and live with somebody that's a cousin, and they would give me a room, but I didn't have much. I didn't have much. It
And so
was
you
very,
worked at
very
a bank
poor.
doing accounting
So I
and
had to get a job and find it, get little jobs, and I would help with it until I was able to get a job that I would get paid every month. But the first 2 years, seventh grade, eighth grade, it was very, 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 very tough until I was able to my some people my dad knew to the church, they helped me, and then I was like a uh, what is the word? Conserje is the word in Spanish, but it has a word in English. I cannot remember right now. But it was a government office, so the lady was in charge for to collect taxes. So I was the helper, like I was cleaning the office. Um, I will take the deposit, the money that we collected that day. I will go to the bank, and then she would send me to do things, and be the assistant. So I did that job. It was a good job. I kept the job until even when I came I with my scholarship to the United States. I still had the job, and I wrote a letter. Somebody helped me so I could have the permission to be absent because I had received a scholarship to come to the U.S. And then when I went back, I could have continued, but I was not smart for one thing. But at the same time, it played well because what I got after that, it was a different situation. It helped me out too. But I could have kept that job. And since I already had come to the US and went back to Honduras and enrolled at the university, I would have been in the government executive at this point. I would have been teaching. I would have been a politician. And if I
like
had kept that little job, because I became professional, I was bilingual. I had gone into accounting again.
you knew high level math and
Yes, I
so you would be
spoke
like in the
English.
you would be like in the Honduran
I
IRS.
would have been in 100, something like that, or in customs. When they uh, pour
When ships come to bring
chips
goods.
come to being good to trades, all of the things. Being like I would have been a boss. I mean, have been somebody in the office with people because I was that smart also in that field. But it was interesting.
So how long did it take you to finish high school?
In
So
that
like
little job,
24 ish?
yeah, I was 24.
Because you
So
said 6 years.
6 years. So say I was 18, and then the first year was rough. I have nothing, man. At one time, I had one pair of shoes, and the pair of shoes that were so worn out that I have a hole in the bottom, and then like I would not have enough clothes. It was pretty tough. And my dad would give me a hard time because the first year he helped me. The second year I did it on my own because I didn't want to go back to the farm. It's just too hard, and I knew that there was no future.
You preferred to get an
There was no
education
future.
and
And he said, "Well, one more year, and then if you don't have a job," and then in the second year he helped me a little bit, but I was able to. I tried and find a job.
then you supported yourself with that
Not
job as
only
an
not
assistant.
only that, until the second year when I got my job, I brought my younger brother to the city.
Oh, so you were supporting him
I was supporting my,
until he got a
I
job.
one thing that I did though that was very lucky. It was just like I've been sharing with you that I am a very religious person.
Mhm.
So I got involved with a youth group in the church, my Catholic church. So we get involved, and then my life changed because I had different friends. Like I was never also like I would smoke sometimes, but not really. Even like I would not drink. I would never. I was never a person driven to do the kind of things. But being with the young people that they were churchgoers, it helped me a lot. And then when I get that little job, and then I could do more, then I help my brother. What I did was that little job, government job I had taken, after a year or so. I let my brother to work like me, and I took another little job. So my brother and I we worked together. We worked together, and then we were living with a nice family that and years after that, we were not adopted because we did not need to be adopted because we have a good parents. But symbolically, that lady became like our mom, and that we lived with them for I don't know, 8 years, maybe longer. So I helped my brother, and then when my brother were settled, we helped the next brother
Together, which made it
together.
a little easier to help the next brother.
So and then by then I came to the United States, and when I went back, I get a good job, and then I helped the other brother and my sisters, and then they that's why they left the farm too. That now we only have three brothers and a sister that are in the land that my dad
And you said there
gave.
was 13 of you, counting the sister who died.
It will be, yeah. It's
So
12 now.
yeah,
Yes.
so 8 of you made it out of rural Honduras and made a life for yourself in the city.
Right. So yeah, and then I am the blessed one. It's really, but I don't know why it happened to me though. I am the only one here, but because I'm here, I have like my youngest brother, the last one that my mom had. He's an engineer, and I was able to
Give him that
give him
education.
the education. And then he went to the regular education. He didn't have to go at night like I did. My brother, the one that is next to me that I had helped him, he became thought he worked for a bank. Now my very youngest one, the last one, he raised him and I paid for it. He went through the whole university. Me like he is my son. He's funny. He would call me sometimes. He said, my dad didn't invest him in anything. Like we bought him everything, shoes, whatever. Even when we make fun of him when he was needed to remove his wisdom teeth.
Mhm.
He would ask me, or he would have to do internships. He would ask me for the money. Now he has a good job. He's married to an engineer. Also, they have a little boy, and who goes to bilingual school. So he lives independently, and he helped with my mom when my mom was ill. He was helping a lot. So that's how I made my house. Oh, but let me tell you this. 24, 1987, I finished my high school. I graduated. And then since I had that work for that office that is part of the government, even I had not received, I told you, I had not received my scholarship. Then I would have moved to the capital city with that job, part of the government, go with like you said, being the IRS. And then I would have gone to university. And But before that, that was my plan, right?
Mhm.
When somebody said to me, "Hey, they said that are offering scholarships to go to the United States, and we all had to do just put our names in there." And then they said that you had to be the three requirements that you come from the economically disadvantaged background, and then you have good grades, and then when they interview you, they want to give you some exams, aptitude exams, all of those things, and they view those three things, and then they will consider you to go to the United States. I was not really planning on that. My plan was to move to the capital city because I had that little job that I could have transferred. And then my plan, no, I'm going to university. By then, I'm going.
Whichever way I'm going, I'm going.
And then what happened? I got the scholarship and I came to the U.S.
So which city did you go to high school in?
Okay. Oh, the name of the city is Danli. Danli. And then that Lee ending has some kind of meaning because there are different towns in that area. It's an indigenous word. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but there are more other towns that are smaller than Lee, but like Cuyali, Arauli. So that is the main city now that now there are different high schools. Like when I went, it was just two, one private and the public, one that the government had opened in the early 80s. Danli is the name of the little town. Now they have two universities, I think, or three universities. So it's grown. It's a big city now. What is 40? It was in
40,
early
almost 50
80s,
years. So
80s,
almost 50
almost
years.
50 years. This city is crazy. It has grown a lot. Yeah, that's the name of the place where I went to my high school.
And so you said that you applied casually for a scholarship to come to the
Yes,
U.S.
just for my name, because somebody said that. One member of the group of the church,
Mhm.
you know,
They're like, hey, they're
yeah,
giving this out. Yeah.
yes,
And so
I heard that
um,
the place over there, there.
when you learned that you had been approved for the scholarship, how did you decide to go to the U.S.?
Oh, it was a very decision. I was telling the group right here earlier that at that time I was 24, so I had a fiance.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the church group. I had met her to that, and then my idea was to, like I say, I'm going to the capital city, continue studying, and then my life was already okay. It's
You had it
gonna
planned out.
I planned out, right? So when I got the scholarship, So they interviewed us. Several of my friends went, and then when they announced that my name was in the list, I was like, "What am I gonna do? What am I gonna tell the people?" Okay, my parents got very excited. My friends got very excited. Now the young lady that I was supposed to marry, how do I say it? But she was very, very helpful. And then it was just the excitement was to the top. I couldn't sleep some nights thinking, "What, the United States?" I have been in the capital city maybe 2 or 3 times. Then I had to get a passport, get everything ready, all the paperwork. But part of the scholarship, they will, well, coming from the Danlí to Tegucigalpa, the capital city, um, I had to pay. But when we were in services that they were in the hotel, they would put us in the hotel for orientations before we came here. They would give us some orientations, talk about the culture. And it was a very good, well, like a week orientation. They would pay for us. They would put us in hotels, and food was served, and all of the, it was just unbelievable. When I go back, that's what I'm happy. When I come in, I say fabuloso, because I appreciate that every single day of my life. I go like, how did I make it here? I don't know.
And then, so did you come to the U.S. for accounting, or
No, this is the, oh, but that's a funny minute. So, we still working in the high school part, or we're gonna move to the higher education?
we're doing this? This interview is meant to be about your high school, and then your like first part of the U.S.
Okay,
education.
for part. So, okay, so that way I don't save for the other part when I was in Kansas. Um, okay, so here's the funny part, right? At that time, uh, we we lived a very naive life. We didn't have a friend in my youth group. We would read the Bible and we played the guitars, and then we always getting gathering, together at the outside the church, and then we go to the little place to have fun, like eat ice creams or stuff like that. But we didn't know much. Like I never seen a computer. We never used a computer. In my high school, we didn't have a computer. They have typewriters, and they had the regular file cabinets, when they keep folders for records.
Mm-hmm.
My high school didn't have, so like I never really seen a touch a computer, but we heard the computer science was coming, and then you would get one of those youth people that we knew that they have taken, they had gone to the capital city and take a computer course,
Mm-hmm.
and then they knew how to work in a computer. So one that we interviewed, they asked us which field we wanted to go. So guess what? What I picked? I heard about computers. I picked computer science,
Mm-hmm.
and then it worked well because I knew some a little bit of accounting, but there were other fields that the people will picked. So I never touched a computer. I seen them, and by then they were coming to some banks, uh, and I think at the distance, I see somebody that were funny, those like old
The
TVs,
really big ones,
big
and with
ones.
the
Yeah, yes. So that's what I did. So I decided that uh, it was just in the news saying in the television, you would hear, oh yeah, computer science is a new thing, the communication and the typewriters are gonna go away, and then everybody's gonna say things and the machine, everything. So that's what I signed up for, to learn about computers.
and is that what you studied when you came to the U.S. for the
Yes.
first part of your
Oh yeah, yeah.
education?
That's what. Yeah, that's what it was. We we learned the first time I learned how to put. By then, uh, it was called DOS, disk operating system,
Mm-hmm.
and then the now is the iOS and iPhones. The
Mm-hmm.
operating
The
system,
yeah,
uh,
internal
the
operating
internal
system, I
operating
think.
system, right? By then, to turn on the computer, you had to insert the disk. The computer was just like a dead machine. So you would put in the floppy disk, and the computer will come alive.
And add Microsoft to it
Get
and all
ready,
that.
and then you had to insert another disk which had the word processor, and then computer put it in there, so it was ready to receive, and then you would type. Then you would serve a disk where you save your files. So you had three things. three things. So buying the thing, but then quickly was coming the floppy disk. They were the square little things that you put
With the
in
hard
instead of
casing
the
and the
floppy. Yes, but it was still the same process. And by then I have gone back to Honduras. There was early 90s, and at that time I went back to Honduras and took another. When I went back, I instead of going to National University for 1 year, I took a more advanced computer course there. And that's when I, for the first time, I heard that they said, okay, networks, and then eventually it's going to be something that is going to be called internet. They're talking about the engineers in the United States and in Europe. They're talking about there will be communications in there. And we were young, and people were like, "What? What are you talking about? That you can send? Yeah, you can communicate with another computer, and you can send email. The word
an
first
electronic
time
letter.
electronic uh, uh, correos, correos electrónicos. We were like, what? Because we all knew just insert the things.
And you never
So
thought a computer could do that.
never thought that eventually that was gonna happen. So that's what I learned. Went back to the Honduras in 1991, 91, yeah. I took a more advanced computer course, and then that's what allowed me to get a job in a bank. And I was working. By then, the banks were now accounting was in a computer, and then we had to do putting the data in there,
Like in a
data
spreadsheet.
processor, spreadsheet, everything. Then there was a director in the department with a lot of computer, very cold. We had to be with refrigerator, it had to
Because the
be
computers
air
got really
conditioned
hot.
computer needed that. So we had to go with a sweater, a jacket, and then we learned, I learned to type and then to put um, process the information, the bank transaction. We had to process it. So I worked for a bank. That was a big job. I was so excited. I got my tie, I
A
was
suit
over.
jacket.
Yeah, I could put a jacket, but mostly a tie, just a tie, and then you have a nice jacket. 'Cause the room was always cold because the air conditioning was, for the computer. So it was interesting.
And then, so when you came to the U.S. for the first time, did you know any English?
No, 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 zero. And this is funny part because in high school, uh, English. That's when I mentioned in my class here that when I was teaching at Brook Hill, and I had my students, what? How many courses are you taking? 7. So Spanish would be what? Is it Spanish? Is it 3, 1? No, it's number 7. So for us, that was English was. English was, and then
So,
we
but
were.
so they taught you, but you didn't like put effort into
No,
learning it.
no. Yeah, I never thought that I was gonna need English and I come. So when I gave me the scholarship, a good friend of mine that we're still very, very close friends, Victor Sosa, that dude was smart. He didn't have to go to high school the way I did. Parents sent him to school. And then as a teenager, he had been sent to the seminary. So in the seminary, he spent about 3 years, but he ended up, not really, that was not his, the call, and so he had learned some basics in English. So he handed me some material that he said, this is what I use. This is like my brother. He said, this is what we use when we're in the seminary. It might help you. So I had the first time I see an English Spanish dictionary. So, and he knew
Like a
some.
handwritten one that he had made, or like
No,
a
no, bought it, a little
but
packet with a real dictionary. I don't know what happened because I brought it here to the United States when I came with my scholarship. So Victor handed that to me, and he would come on Saturdays and Sundays. We would sit down, and he would say to me, "Oh, and when I was in high school, he completed high school in the seminary, and he said, "Oh yeah, we learn English, basic English. Here. How are you?" And then he said he would teach me by then, and then you're supposed to say, "I am fine." So we learned the basic words. The English that I knew is what he had remembered from the high school.
so very
Is
little.
it very little? So no, we came with zero English. They put us to live with families that spoke only English, and we were forced to
Adapt.
adapt and learn the language from day one.
Yes, I remember in class you tell the story about the first English word you properly learned was eat
Eat
because
the
you sat down for dinner the first night
the
you got
host
there,
family,
and
yes.
he was going
Eat.
eat.
It was funny. Yeah, Mr. Bunch. I would never remember but Bunch. And it was interesting because with what Bunch was another cool story. He had done it. I mean, and I was kind of old for to a college student because I was 20. I turned 25 that year in '88. My first birthday cake celebration. I never had one before with the family. The mom, the lady who, the host family, they celebrated my 25th birthday, and it was hard for me because I was most of them were just people who have finished high school. They were 19, 20, 19, 20, and then very few of us were older than that. There were more people than my age, but I was 24. So he decided, with another guy from Costa Rica, young kid, to host us, and it was very helpful because later I found out that the reason he wanted me, he was already a person who had a mission in Honduras with his church. So he God does a lot of good things, man, in our lives. But bunch, when I finished my 2 years studying in the United States and went back to Honduras, he would go and visit his mission, and he would come and pick me up, and I was his translator. And we would travel Honduras. I never been in the inner part of Honduras. I never been in places to the capital the fact that I gone to get my paperwork, my passport, and everything. When he came, he was the first one that for the first time, I took a trip to Honduras. We went in a vehicle he rented. It was the two of us, and we just spent the whole week together, traveling all over Honduras and going to his little where his mission was. And he continued doing that until I came back here in 1995. And then he didn't have me anymore in Honduras to help him translate. But he was funny. That was the first word he was like, eat, eat. I didn't know. I said, oh, comer. And the Costa Rican guy, he knew some English. He couldn't speak, but he knew how to read. And then the way we communicate with that family, it was with notes. He had a pad, and he would write questions. I was like my student over here that I was very limited. And my uh, classmate Joseph, he could read English, so he would write, and I would tell him, I said, ask him. I would say it in Spanish, ask him, and then Joseph would be able to write in English, and he would ask questions to the
And
host
then and
family,
then they would say it
and
in
then they would
English.
write it. They would write it back, and then he would repeat to us in English. Yes, yes,
So
yes,
you would say it in Spanish. This Joseph, who was
yes,
rooming with you,
yes.
would write it in
In
English.
English,
The host family would read it in
we would read
English
it
out loud so you could
out
hear
loud,
it.
and we could hear it
And then they would write an answer in
in
English,
English,
and
right,
then Joseph would translate it into
to
Spanish.
Spanish, and then that's it. Franco. We started learning very quickly, and then he also the host family, they have a program to learn Spanish. They was just a listening, just a listen. So they handed it to me because I was the limited English speaker at that time. Joseph was advanced, so I would listen every evening.
Because most of it would be in English, and
Right.
then there'd be little bits in
Yeah,
Spanish.
I listen a lot of those tapes that they had. So yeah, it was an immersion, 100%, 100%. And then I get involved in church very quickly. I met the priest, I met the office, and then we organized a little praying group with us. We started to go to church every Sunday, and then they were very helpful. They would invite us to eat, and the whole thing, the exposure, was just 100%.
So, what American city was all this in? What college did you go to for this first part?
The closest it is, little town is the name of the little town is Coffeeville, Kansas. Coffeeville is a little town that is in the southeast of Kansas, in the very corner, and the town is half in Kansas and half in Oklahoma. The little town is, the border, the states
And
cuts
they,
the
did
little.
it? Was it one of those towns that had like a line of brick that's a different color in the middle of the
Right,
town to show where the
right.
state border
To
is?
tell the state borders. So the closest city, big city, is Tulsa. Tulsa, there is a big airport, and then it's like hour and a half. It's less than going from here to Dallas to go from Coffee. And then there is another little larger town that is like Tyler town in Oklahoma. It's called Barrettsville. So that's why people from Coffee will come to Barrettsville to do the shopping. Like if you live in Art per se, and then you come to Tyler to do the shopping.
Mm.
So we went to Barnesville quite a bit. That's why the mall was. The first time I'd ever seen a mall. I went to that, and then we get clothes, shoes. The scholarship would give us a little bit of money every season so we can change the clothes, you know. Part of the scholarship was also getting um, that. So I get my first time that I was able to get more than one pair of shoes. And I think I had
Because
like three. I got, I would get
yeah, because I remember you mentioned to me before that you didn't get your first pair of shoes until you were in fourth
fourth
grade,
grade.
about 12 years old, right? Or
Yeah,
10?
it's 10.
10 years,
Yeah,
10 years
anything
old.
between 9 and 10, 10, 10.
And
Yeah.
you paid for them yourself
I
with
paid
money you had
my,
saved up.
yeah. Remember I was mentioning to you about the sugar cane
Hmm.
thing? So there is a kind of candy that you make, that is very sweet, very soft before it goes into the hard candy. I have to show you that one. I'm going to find a video and show that to you, how that worked. So those little soft candy, my dad would allow us to make at least one, and then we would sell them. And then we would keep the money and we'll save the money. And then eventually I was able to save maybe $5, and I bought my first pair of shoes
And
at
then
that time,
and then I
about
guess you
$5.
and then I guess you just paid to keep upgrading them as you grew with money you had earned. And
Yes,
so you
and
only
then
ever had
later
the one pair of shoes.
we get that, and later, when we get teenagers, we work more, and then my dad would allow us to, okay, that yeah, you can keep that little part. We harvest beans and we sell something and keep for consumption at home, but the rest we can sell it. And then my brother and I, we were pretty clever. We was sell one part and save the money, and eventually we start buying our own things. Yeah.
Yeah, that feeling of independence is very
Yeah, we
important for a
started
man
very,
growing
very,
up.
very early. We learned that. Yeah.
Um, so why did you go back to Honduras? Did your scholarship run out,
Yes, the
or
scholarship was part of the that program was a good program. It helped a lot of Central American and the Dominicans were part of that program. Uh, and then part of the deal was you come for 2 years, and then you had to serve in the country for at least two before you applied again to come to the United States.
mm, and
So
you couldn't afford to stay in the States on your own?
no, and then I would be illegal, and then that was not. It was never crossing my mind, to be illegal. No,
You knew you could make it if you did it the right
no.
way.
I just knew that going back to Honduras, um, I was gonna make it. Like
It wouldn't be bad for
I
you.
worked for that big bank corporation that
Yeah.
also, if I had not gotten my scholarship, I tell you, I had my government job. I would have gone to the city, study, get my degree, and I would have become a big guy in the government, a politician, something.
So
Then the
do you think
second
you would have been
time,
happy doing that?
yeah, I think so. I would just think because everything was under in my mind and my heart. It was a response. Everything that happened, it was a response to my prayers. So I was happy. Second time, I went back and I gained my scholarship. But when I finished my scholarship, I went back another 2 years, and I went for 1 year to that computer school, and then I gained my job at the big bank corporation, big strong bank, and then I went back to university. I was working and studying.
And then you
They
came
would
back
have
to the
moved me
States
to.
again
I would
later.
have. They have moved me to a big position. I would have been somebody in the bank. I would have been there. I would have bought a home through the bank.
So
I
you
would
would have
have.
had a good life if
I
you had
would
stayed in
have. I
Honduras.
would have. Yeah, and I would finish my degree and become a bilingual. I would have. My idea was work in that bank and pick a second job as a teacher at night because the high school was still there,
And teach people
and
English
teach people
or
English because the high school there they teach English is mandatory in the high schools. So I would have two jobs. That was my idea. But God again answered my prayers. And look, now where I'm doing this is like a dream.
yeah.
Teaching is like a dream to me. Like I can't believe that I'm doing this. It's so much fun.
And then let's see, anything else? So you said that before, outside of our interview series, that you have a child from before your current wife. So
Yes,
so you said you had a fiance when you were 24.
right.
So is that the mother of
No,
your
no,
first
no,
kid?
no. This and that. Okay, so we skipped the part with my child. So when I started high school, the year that I started high school, when in the rural areas, we're spaced out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we had neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a good neighbor next to my dad's land, and then I was a young guy. I just like dating, but not really dating, kind of. And then I we had a child with that young girl.
Because there was
So
no
right,
preventatives.
no, it's no. My brother did. Now that child is the one who worked here. It's just things play out. I don't know. She's the best mom. I had the best grandkids ever. Um, that year that I went to get my started my high school in 1982. Girl was already pregnant. I didn't tell my dad and my mom. If I had said that and I had mentioned it, then my dad would have not let me go to the little
Because
city,
he would have made you
Dunley,
stay home and take care of
and
him.
take care of that. Even in my first year, he helped me, right? And I was not successful on the job. I had no skills. And then I needed a job that would allow me to work from 8 to 4 and then go to classes. I could get jobs, but no time. You come in, but you don't know
When you leave.
when you leave the job.
You leave when you're done for the day, not when the
Yes,
time is up.
yes. So I was trying to find a job, but God provided. I got that job that it was an office job that we came at 8 and by 4 we're done. So and I could. It was an office job that I could bring, like you mentioned, like your job, you can sit down and do this kind of activities for your classes. So I also studied. I went to job with my notebooks. I was in the office helping the lady, uh, doing the collecting the taxes, and then but in the free time I was doing my homework. So I always got good grades because I had the whole time to study.
Because
And I
you
had
had all day to study,
plenty of
only like
time
four
in the
hours of class in the
office,
evening.
on the office, and then I would go to class from 6 to 10.
Oh, so you had almost twice as much time outside of class to do
Right.
homework
So
as.
every day, when I went to class, I was completely right. I was at the top. I was at the top. So yeah, 1982, I started my high school. That year in June, my daughter was born. And then my parents helped me a lot. And since my dad was the main guy in the little community, he was the preacher in the Catholic Church. So my mom was the one who gave me a hard time. She said, "You embarrass us, doing that because you're supposed to get married and have to have kids." And then people are criticizing us, and then I was like, "I'm sorry." And then they would provide, they help me. And when I get a job, my dad said, "Well, you better take responsibility." So I took responsibility since ever. My daughter knows that I have provided everything for her since she was just a year old. That I was able to give more, and my little job was just little money was just to pay for what I was leaving, and then buy things for her, and she didn't. Uh, she had a good life, and she would live with the grandma, and then with my mom. So
And you
they were
paid for
neighbors.
everything.
Yeah, I paid for the necessary, not for everything, but what I could. But, the clothes, shoes. When she started going to school, I paid for everything,
Medicine,
and
that
then
kind of thing.
eventually she came to the city, live with the family that I live with in the city that she went like an adopt mom. She Ada came. My daughter came when she was like in third grade. Came to Danlí, and I was already working in the bank, and I was not making a lot of money, but enough for the two of us that she got everything. She got everything she needed, and when she turned 15, that is the year that I came back again in 1995. Um, wait, I came back to work for Tyler ISD in 1995. In 1997, then my daughter came. She was 15, and she went to the high school in White House, and then went to TJC, and then completed her degree here. Now she's working on her master's degree. Yeah, it was a mistake, but it was a good mistake at the same time. Now I see it as a good because now
Maybe something you shouldn't have done, but it turned out well.
it turned out well, but not always turns out well at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm blessed.
and yeah, I think. Um, Anything else that I need to ask? Uh, oh, you didn't tell me the name of the university you went to for your first 2 years in
The
Kansas. You said the cities, but you didn't say the name of the
Okay,
school.
it is a community college, so it's just called Coffeeville Community College. Yeah, Coffee Community College. I did those 2 years there. I get the associate degree in computer science.
Um, Then what was the name of the bank you worked at? Do you
Oh,
remember?
okay, so when I went to Honduras and I work in a bank, it's called Banco Atlántida. Banco Atlántida. It's a big bank corporation now. By then, but it was very strong, and now they are even stronger. As they like over there, Banco Atlántida, like when you say here, Chase Bank or Bank of America,
So really, really big.
really big bank. Yeah, everywhere in Honduras, they manage a lot of money there. Yeah, I would have been. I would have done very well if I had stayed. I would have been teaching like I am teaching. I would be teaching English in high school because my degree would have been in the National University would be in foreign language. I would have taken French by then because they require an extra a third language too. That was my idea. But English was my major degree, and since I have done my 2 years here, they gave me credit for a lot of basic English. They gave me an exam, and oh yeah, we're gonna give you these many classes. So I completed like more than half of the degree in Honduras when I returned here in 1995. Um, oh yeah, we had completed the degree, my career there in lenguas extranjeras, what I call foreign languages.
So your educational journey was just learning from your parents at home as a toddler, and then you went to Santa Maria
Yeah,
Elementary,
elementary, yes.
and then you went to Don
Then Lee
Lee
to my high
Public High
school,
School, public high school,
Poly High School,
and then you went to Coffeyville
Coffeyville,
Community College,
Kansas,
and
community
then
college.
Honduras.
Went back to Honduras
And what
and
was the name of that college or
the
university?
National University is
It was the only one at the
the
time.
National University, but there were two, but they are both public. So Universidad Nacional Pedagógica is one, so pedagogical school, so to become teachers. So I did 1 year there, and then I translated to the National University because I just wanted to do different languages, and then La Universidad Nacional de Honduras, just like that. National University, they don't really have a particular name. And then now national is everywhere, but they would say, La Universidad Nacional and Danley, like you have, UT Tyler,
University
UT
of
at
Texas.
Tyler,
Yeah,
yes.
University of Texas
Over
at
there, the
Tyler.
same thing. Universidad Nacional en Danley, Universidad Nacional en Comayagua, Universidad Nacional en San Pedro Sula. So that's
But you went to the first Universidad
yeah. I
Nacional,
went to a big
the first one, de
yeah,
Honduras.
de Honduras in Tegucigalpa. It's a huge. It's about I don't know, good 40, 50,000 students in that. For a country like that, 50,000 students is huge.
Yeah, because Honduras is smaller than Texas, isn't it?
Oh yeah, physically, but there are what now? I think there are already anything between 10 and 11 million people. I think now in Honduras.
Not bad.
Yeah, it's a lot for a little tiny place.
Yeah.
The land is very.
Is it expensive now in Honduras to buy land?
Yes, yes, I've become expensive now. Yes, yeah. So yeah, that's the way that it went.
So you said you went for 2 years of computer science at Coffeyville, and
Yes.
then you went for a year of teaching at the Pedagogical National University of
Yes,
Honduras.
and at the same time, I was doing both. I was doing
And then
that's
you did
that
the-
year that I did La Universidad Pedagógica. I managed 2 different times. I was going to the computer science school and to the national university.
So you did 2 years of computer science at Coffeyville. You did another year of
Another year in a private school in Honduras, and that
The
year
year of
I was
teaching.
also going to that.
And then for your second year back on Honduras, you just did 4 languages.
Yes, then I didn't. What happened is that now my wife Linda here, in a year that I returned to Honduras, she went to live in Honduras. Then I moved from capital city to San Pedro for 2 years, and then by then I didn't go to the national. I was just working. I was working. I took a few more computer courses there, in a private school there, but
Mainly just working.
mainly just working and then taking those few computer courses. And then since I already had a good job, I was able to transfer from San Pedro Sula, the second largest city, working already for Banco Atlante. That's what I started in San Pedro. So I started for Banco Atlante, And then I asked to be transferred to the capital city, and then I completed more classes at the National University. I didn't go back to la Universidad Pedagógica de teaching. I went to the National University instead because it was just for the time. It was just easier to manipulate that.
And then, besides the scholarship that let you come to America, did you work to pay for your college education, or did you win other scholarships from the country or from businesses
No, when I
or
was in Honduras, I was paying, but there it's different. It's not very expensive.
pretty
The
cheap?
government is,
Gives you discounts
so
and
you
things.
still pay enrollment stuff like that, and you buy your books, but the tuition is not a
Uh,
big thing. And since I was already working for the bank in Tegucigalpa, I already have a house where I was living and paying it.
very little.
Going to university was just an extra thing, but to pay for the classes was not a whole lot. A semester you can spend what, $100 in
In
per
that
class
time.
at that time. At that
Okay.
time, yeah. So I was making enough money in the bank that I could pay for the enrollment.
And
And
that would be 100 American dollars or 100 like Honduras dollars in the time.
the lempiras at the time, no, it would be at the time would have been when I there I would pay probably $100 American dollars. And lempiras, I don't remember how much that would have been at that time, but it was not a whole lot that I had to pay in there for my classes.
Um, and so you initially became interested in teaching just out of a practical interest for a second job.
That was the always said. Remember when my dad said that I was for like 14, and he said, "I'm gonna let you go to the elementary and finish this year because you can start teaching
Oh yeah,
there, and then on weekends, a lot of people, that's what we
you
did
can
in the
teach the people
community.
in the
You
local
can teach
community.
in the local community just the ABCs. So you can do first grade because we don't have kinder, right? So I could have work with first graders and then just teaching them the el alfabeto, and then do the syllables, and
And
then they provide the books, and then you go for trainings during the weekend. You have to come to Danli, Saturdays and Sunday,
as a way to make sure that people in the rural
that
areas would
you
have
are getting, and
teachers.
eventually in 5 years, then you get a degree. You get a teaching degree. So that was the goal. No,
So
I always wanted to be a teacher.
oh, so you always wanted to be a teacher,
Yeah.
and then you were doing accounting out of like practicality to have a
Because I
job.
couldn't. Okay, so here's the part that you asked me, okay, the high school. So the first 3 years are basic.
Hmm.
Even over there in Spanish, they call it plan básico,
Hmm.
like a basic plan. Yeah?
Hmm.
So it's middle school. So
Hmm.
you seventh, eighth, and ninth grade.
Hmm.
And then after that, then you can go do 2 years in a general studies. It's called un bachillerato. But we
Hmm.
call it here bachelor's. Over there, it's called bachillerato. It's high school.
Hmm.
And what we call it bachillerato here, which is a college degree, over there is una licenciatura, which I already talked in class about that.
Mm.
So you either go to 2 years and get a bachillerato, which is just general courses to get you ready to go to university.
Hmm.
But I went for 3 to get accounting because I was hoping, since I already had the job, the office job, the government job that had to do with accounting and with collecting taxes. So we had to have a book, with all the money that we're collecting, we had to do a report. The lady, I was the assistant. There was at the end of the month, she had to do a whole collection, and then whatever we had collected money, the taxes we had collected, had to match with the reports. So I had a basic, I had to do with accounting. So I would rather do that. Plus, the general study would not offer at night. The only thing that was offered at night was accounting. But this is the funny thing. Two of my best friends in high school, when we finished, okay, seventh, eighth, and ninth. I finished the ninth grade. And then two of my best buddies, they said, we are moving. We're going to the capital city to go to the academy, educational academy.
The
They
big
call
school to
that,
prep you for
to
college.
become, no, to become teachers,
Oh.
elementary teachers, to prepare you to become teachers. So those two, their mind was, we're going, right? Well, that's what I wanted. Because I still in my mind, it would go back to the mountain when I grew up with my dad
And teach
and
there.
become the teacher. because this shit was, the school now we're growing more kids.
But they
I
did
can be in my working with my dad. I can own my little piece of land and teach and get money from the government and work
farm,
in my farm. That was a good plan. And I have a daughter,
but you need to support.
Yeah, you
So,
need to support. So in my mind, that was it.
but they just didn't offer the things in the
I
evening.
couldn't go to the capital city. I cry. I pray and I cry because my two friends went to the educational. By then they called them academies, la academia de profesores.
Mhm.
Pedro Nufio, even have a name, Academia de Profesores Pedro Nufio. No, vamos a la Pedro Nufio. Pedro Nufio was a famous training school for teachers in the capital, and it was the only one that it could be a mix that girls and men could go because there was one farther that was better only for men, but you had to pay there, you had to live in there. It was a boarding school.
And it was very expensive.
Oh, I couldn't afford it. And the other boarding school was in Dunlea, only for girls. I couldn't attend that one. The academy for teachers was right there, but it was only for girls. The other one is in Comayagua, 2 hours, 3 hours away
By car.
by car.
So that's like a week.
It's a long at that time, right? It was hard to at the time. So I couldn't go to the Comayagua Academy for men, and it was a very prestigious one. The other one was in Tegucigalpa, La Academia Pedro Nufio, that is mixed.
Mm-hmm.
But then I didn't have, I had to quit the job, only go to school. Where would I get the money to pay for the living and food and all the expenses for
And supporting your daughter.
supporting? And plus, I didn't have daughter. So I, by default,
Just
I had to do my other 3 years at night at the high school. Funny story. When those friends, those two guys who went to the academy for a teacher, they applied for the scholarship. The people who had a basic in accounting have a better chance to get the scholarship than somebody who had become a teacher.
That makes more sense.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
but it was meant to be that I would become a teacher. Because I did it later, coming to the next day, going back, and eventually
Became a teacher.
became a teacher.
So you found your dream.
I find my dream, and that's what I like. And if the incarnation really happens, I want
Always
to
would
be
be
a
a
teacher.
teacher. Always
I want to
would
be a teacher. Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing this first part of your higher education journey with me. This is really like inspiring. It's a big lesson for me, that despite all these things against you, that you can still succeed and find your dream and be successful in it. But we're about out of time for this interview, so we'll have to meet again next week to continue this series.